So, so while you're right there on goal 2, agriculture, that one needs a little bit of work. I don't think it's quite accurate. I know we want to, it says strengthen partnerships between agricultural businesses, the University of Maryland Extension, and technology providers to accelerate the adoption of innovative farming solutions. I don't think that hits true in the real world. Ed, and you see what I'm saying? In other words, farmers are doing all those things anyway. If we could encourage the county to support extension and those type things, I think that is a more realistic goal than what you have there. So anyway, we won't dwell on that today, but that one needs a little bit of work. And I would also like to include forestry along with agriculture throughout this chapter.
Agreed, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to kind of let you guys kind of read through these, and I'll just kind of discuss the major overarching themes for what these goals are. So the first 3 goals are centered around building on regional innovation anchors, establishing a Northeastern Innovation District, connect historic industries with emerging technology and innovation, and invest in Easton Airport and Newman Field and adjacent business park as a center of commerce. Moving to our next theme of goals, strengthening business services, with our first goal to ensure clear, consistent guidance across county government, with 3 associated objectives under there. Goal 2 is to maintain an ongoing business retention and expansion program to keep and grow local businesses. And our third goal under that is to offer education to small businesses to help them compete in today's economy. Our third theme looks at cultivating the region's small business ecosystem, with the goals to position the Department of Economic Development and Tourism as a champion and gateway to direct entrepreneurs' resources, support firms that are ready to scale, and identify and prioritize capital investment needs for aging buildings and industrial sites.
Can I interrupt you a minute? I wonder if we dim the lights, if it would be easier to see the screen.
Andrew, would you mind enlarging the zoom on your computer? Thank you. A lot better.
There we go.
Yep.
Yep.
Too dark for anyone? Don't get sleep on it.
If there's no comments or questions under that, we'll move to our 4th theme, which is to grow and sustain a tourism economy built on excellence. And that first goal is to prioritize retention, reinvestment, succession, and the attraction of new tourism enterprises that enhance the county's authentic Chesapeake experience. Second goal is to enhance the visitor experience and sustain tourism-related business revenue through coordinated data-informed marketing that elevates the county's visibility while respecting and amplifying the distinct identities of its individual destinations. And our third goal under that is to invest in products and infrastructure that enhances the visitor experience, expand cultural and historic assets, and support local businesses.
Okay, so while we're there, and I'm going to defer this at some point to the economic development branch of the county, but we got a Talbot County Welcome Center, and I guess in my mind with everything going on, that the financial commitment as far as the practicality of that, you know, I question that, but that's Cassandra's. That's her thing. If you know, somebody else thinks it'll work, it just I just don't see that one as being practical, but that's just me. Cassandra, real quick, is that?
So, the big vision is certainly aspirational, but we really think that putting the visitor center up in the part of the town that we're calling Northeastern
Uh-huh.
serves the regional medical center visitor, it serves an airport visitor, it serves a Route 50 visitor. And there are ways to do that on a much smaller scale than what the bigger vision that was presented was. So we certainly think that's achievable. We're working with the airport on a small version within the terminal already. I would like to leave it. I think it's,
Okay.
aspirational.
Yep, yep.
If you see it as, phases, then
Yeah.
it's reasonable.
Okay, good.
All right.
Yep, I'll buy that.
Thank you all. And moving to our final goal, the final theme, is to support more adaptable workforce with two associated goals. The first is to align workforce initiatives with innovation and small business initiatives. And the second goal is to ensure Talbot County students and job seekers are aware of the professional opportunities available to them locally. You can read the associated objectives with that there. Do you want to circle back and ask if we have any comments on any of these goals or objectives? Because like I said, they're largely informed from the Economic Development and Tourism Strategic Plan, maybe with some input from some best practices from some other economic development and tourism related comprehensive plans. But generally, this is very much aligned with what the goal was between planning department and the economic development and tourism department. If there's any goals that you want me to circle back to, please let me know, or else I will keep moving forward and discuss how we've gotten into some specific economic markets that are important for the economic development and tourism industries. So getting into economic markets, you can see here we have a general intro getting into discussing the major economic markets within Talbot County. We discuss healthcare, we discuss tourism and hospitality, retail and professional services, agricultural and natural resources within that intro. And then we get into more kind of specific statistics. We get into the largest employers in Talbot County. You can see that's headed by University of Maryland Regional Health. And you can see these about 10 to 12 of these top employers within the county, their location, their product service, and their total employment within Talbot County.
Okay, so while we're right there, if we can go back a little bit to the sentence on agriculture, bottom of the page. Yep. So I think this would be a good place to put forestry in as well. We lost it on the screen again. Hold on. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then at the end of that sentence, the beginning of the next sentence, it says farmland, aquaculture, poultry. So all those things occur on farmland. So I think we want to say something like, then again, I'm not going to wordsmith this, but maybe it should be traditional farming or grain operations or something like that. But anyway, that one needs just a little bit there. Are you following me?
Gotcha.
See what I'm saying, Bryce?
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
Thank you for that comment. Followed by our largest employers, we'll have a table of employment by industry. This is split off 2 pages here. You can see here state government, local government, private sector, the number of establishments for each, average annual employment, current average weekly wages, and we are still performing the 10-year forecast employment. or what have you, having that kind of broken down by specific municipality, I think would be beneficial to include, if the county would like to see that. And we briefly discussed the consideration of increasing the accommodations tax from 4 to 6%.
So is that something that needs to be in the comprehensive plan? In other words, I feel like that's either gonna happen or it isn't relatively soon.
Yep. No, I think there's some general information, and I'll obviously defer to Cassandra and her team here. There's some information that we've included here out of the strategic plan that may not be necessary to be included in here. So there probably will be some refinement to these sections that we kind of took a deeper dive into, because a lot of that information is out of that section. We kind of didn't want to leave things
Right.
out if you all felt
Yep.
them necessary for purpose of discussion. But things like that certainly aren't extremely necessary to be included in the comprehensive planning aspects.
Yeah.
Certainly, they
Yeah.
make good practical sense in a strategic plan.
So Cassandra, is that something that you feel is gonna happen or not happen?
I don't think that's an active, I was just pulling out the strategic plan to look, because I don't remember it being in the actual strategic plan. So, I think that can easily come out.
Yeah.
And we have from the EDC a small group working on refinements, but I would certainly take that out. We are the lowest in the state, I think you should
Yeah,
note that.
right,
And it does fund the, work of municipalities.
right, Right.
So,
But-
the tax structure
yeah.
is important to this document, but an effort to increase it is not on the table this time.
And I don't know what we do, but, yeah.
Would the planning commission like to include that we, what Cassandra had said, that we have the lowest in the state, just as a
I would,
point of reference?
I would be satisfied if you worked with Cassandra to, that this is her ballpark and,
Yep,
you know.
and they have, like she said, they have comments coming from the EDC. Bryce and I actually had the opportunity last week, I think maybe the week prior actually, to meet with the EDC and present this first cut of this draft chapter, just to introduce them and inform them of the chapter. They assigned a project team specific within their group that's actually taking a look at this now, and they're gonna give us a more comprehensive list of comments that we'll work on in the background with our consulting team to make revisions and then bring a final cut draft back to you all that'll include their comments, your comments, and the
Right.
public comments we
Right.
receive.
I mean, in general, some of these things that are either are gonna happen or not happen in the next, a lot of this stuff either may or may not happen before we even, hit the press
Absolutely.
with this
Right.
thing. Yeah,
But I think we can keep it more general to say the county will work with economic development on an ongoing basis, as opposed to putting in specific goals like this that,
Yep.
that may or may not be relevant.
We can make that happen. Sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
Any final comments on this economic market section before we move on? Then we get into agriculture specifically, understanding that it is predominant land use, shaping a rural landscape and support local employment.
okay. So the second paragraph there, if you guys didn't know it, you might guess that I might be a farmer. But, so when it talks about the census of agriculture, and this is what confuses people. So it says there's 357 farms. So I think what we're talking about there, and Bryce, I'll let you wordsmith this. There's probably 357 farming operations of all sizes and scales. And then it says the average farm size, 270 acres. I think a lot of people would look at that and say the average size of a parcel. But, maybe that says the average farm operation, tills, or there's some wordsmithing there somewhere. Ed, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. I don't think 270 is the right number,
Yeah, I think that's the average, operation size, but
Yeah,
just,
we could change the
just
wording.
kind of clear that up a little bit, yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Then we get into the different crop categories, discuss some grains, livestock,
another good place to insert forestry.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, we will
Yep.
definitely circle back and include forestry and
Yep.
anywhere that discusses agriculture.
Yep.
That's something that we will,
Yep.
that's something we'll integrate in, absolutely.
Yep.
We get into discussion of preservation efforts. Discussion of agriculture facing specific challenges from commodity prices, climate variability, seasonal conditions. We're coming to the end of agriculture, so if there's any, further comments on that, I understand there's some wordsmithing that may need to be done, and we're happy to work with you guys to make that happen. Then we get into accommodation and food services, which again is very closely tied with tourism and hospitality as well. Discussion of lodging establishments, short-term rentals, discussing that. We cannot really usually get into the big debate over the short-term rental issue, but we did discuss it. Now that is part of the local combination landscape.
Going back to that second paragraph, we still have that accommodations tax sentence in there that probably should be consistent with the previous comment.
At the end of accommodation and food services, we'll turn to get into arts, entertainment, and recreation, which again is closely tied with tourism. Discussing a blend of the cultural institutions, festivals, arts districts, recreational experiences that the county offers. Discussing Easton's Arts and Entertainment District. Get into discussing major festivals that take place in Talbot County.
So I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but it amazes me the contributions of the community and the residents of the county to the arts and entertainments. I don't think it would hurt to recognize that. There's a lot of people that do things behind the scenes and whatnot that
The chances are none of these events or even the venues would exist without
Correct.
that,
Yeah.
income, input from the county residents.
I agree with that.
And another comment, and this is just more for consistency, we mentioned the 6,000 to 8,000 visitors through the for the plein air festival and the Waterfowl Festival signature fall event. It's just not consistency. This past year, they felt that there were 30,000 people who attended the Waterfowl Festival. If we're going to mention the 6 to 8, we should probably do the 20 to 30,000 or something for Waterfowl Festival, or take all of it out, the numbers out, just for consistency.
I'd like to keep it. I think those are
Yeah.
significant numbers that
They are
that probably
significant
should be
numbers for
recognized.
county this small.
We can get an accurate number on that and include it.
Thank you.
And it'd be interesting on the, some of the signature events, if we have historic data to say, you don't need to go back 100 years, but, both of those festivals
Yes.
have grown exponentially over the last couple of years, and that probably should be noted as well.
life science manufacturing, environmental and agri-science technology, and scientific services. This is definitely an emerging sector within the state, country, and the county as a whole. I will say this is something that aligns with the Maryland Department of Commerce's economic development strategies. They're very obviously pushing for the advancement of life science industries throughout the state, and Talbot County is certainly included within that. We're identifying no major research universities, but we identify the Eastern Shore Innovation Tech Center, or Innovation Center. Scientific and environmental firms. Definitely brings us to the end of life sciences. Again, if anybody has any comments, do feel free to stop me, or if I'm scrolling too fast, please do let me know. So that brings us to the end of our economic markets, the general economic markets that shape the local economy. Tourism is specifically impacted and or impacts those industries.
So I have a question, and I'm gonna pick on Cassandra one more time. So obviously, there is a concern, and I know we'll address this in the land use section, but from the economic development side, do we express our concern about large-scale utility solar as well as data centers?
We did not specifically address that in our strategic plan, for a variety of reasons. One, it's sort of outside our purview. We do not support data centers generally because there are not many jobs associated with them, and the high use of utilities, and that may be my personal opinion, but it seems to be a Talbot County, our Talbot County position as well. So we're not actively pursuing those. So the things that we actively are working on would be the medical center and broadband.
Yep. Right.
And so we haven't specifically addressed those, but if you think that we need to in this chapter, we can certainly do that.
What's the feeling of the, I would like, personally, I would like to see it addressed.
I would too,
We're gonna have to,
yeah.
the county's gonna have to address it at some point anyway, so why don't we go ahead?
I think it may be appropriate to put some comments in here about, you know, obviously best practices for land uses. Maybe we highlight that in the agricultural portion of this sector as far as talking about markets, and you know, we can identify some potential threats there and highlight those as threats in that section, which would better inform and bolster the county's posture that we'll obviously come up with in the land use element of the plan,
Right.
where it will be most appropriate, but obviously sprinkling that in through these other chapters where applicable would be necessary. So
Yep.
if you all feel it beneficial, I think we could probably find some way to craft that into the agricultural portion of this. That's just what's coming to my mind of the most appropriate section to maybe address that here, because both of those are large land use areas. Our largest land use area is agricultural in this instance. So
Right.
I think the contemplated use areas where we've seen in other districts is large-scale solar goes in agricultural areas. These data centers are going on raw land as well, not in redeveloped
Well,
corridors, so.
and then with the data, and I don't wanna prolong this, but, you know, from what I'm hearing, the demands from the data centers would just overwhelm, you know, I'm not even sure it's possible at this time,
Right.
but
But
looking down
establishing
the road,
position's important.
the strain on a lot of things.
And I think a chapter that we already discussed with the planning commission was the transportation and utilities chapter, and I
Yep.
think if the planning commission would like to revisit that in terms of taking a position on utility scale solar and on data centers, I think that'd be
Yep.
a very appropriate section to put it in for the utilities.
Yep.
And then further address the land use aspect of it in chapter 9 for land use.
Yep, I think it
So-
can certainly be shown in several different spots in here.
We'll add some stuff in here and bring it back to your attention, and you
Yep.
all can kind of decide on final wording and what's most appropriate where.
Good.
We can do that.
I just wanted to add one thing. A couple years ago, we were part of the team that developed the strategic plan isolated various parts of the state by region and looking at the Eastern Shore. And data centers and broadband was key to the economy in some of those areas. So we'll be sure to pull some of that information in.
No,
so
no,
it
what,
aligns
I don't
with
really
the
care.
future.
I don't really care what the state and if they want data centers here or not. I think the overwhelming is this is Talbot County's comprehensive plan. And at this time, I don't think the county supports large-scale utility
No.
solar or data centers.
Yeah. And to Cassandra's point, it eats up a lot of land and resources and produces very few jobs.
I think
And
we
it-
do,
it-
obviously, oh, I'm sorry.
No, and it's more, it's a very little benefit that I can see for the county.
Right.
Maybe
Yeah.
for the state, maybe for neighboring states, but
Yeah.
for Talbot County itself, I don't see
Yeah.
a lot of benefit for encouraging
Yeah.
those.
And I think the broadband, we all support that. I think
Yes.
that's, you know,
Absolutely.
We're for that.
we're in the ninth inning on that, I
Yeah.
believe. So, yep.
Thank you.
A desire to include the sentence that it's the county's position, current position, not to support data centers, or do we just not want to touch on it at all?
You
I
can
think
work
we-
with Bryce and Brennan. They know where we.
Yeah.
where we
Yeah,
are.
I think we
understands
could
that.
probably add that in here, in one form or another, Andrew, and we're happy to try to take a crack at that and send something back to you based on the comments that we've heard here today, so.
Any other comments on the economic markets? Alright, then we'll just get into a few more socioeconomic statistics. Again, provide understanding of employment, income, poverty patterns, these different factors help influence economic vitality, capacity for growth, and resilience as well. So our employment status here, we have our civilian labor force, those that are employed and unemployed, and we have our employment status for comparisons. We have neighboring counties as well as the state. So you can see Dorchester, the comparison of Dorchester County, Queen Anne County, Caroline County, and the state of Maryland as a whole. Then we get into income and poverty statistics specifically. Discussing total households, families, and getting into income specific to those families as well. You can see here income, the chart of the income in Talbot County, again compared to neighboring counties, Dorchester, Queen Anne, Caroline, and the state of Maryland as a whole. Then we get into some poverty specific statistics, families, married couples, female householders with no spouse, and the percent below poverty level for each of those. And then we get into the specific incentive zones within Talbot County. These create business-friendly environments. Specifically, we've identified the opportunity zones, enterprise zones, opportunity zones and enterprise zones within Talbot County. There are two census tracts within Talbot County that are opportunity zones, both in or covering part of Easton. And these are the census tracts here. If you're interested in where those are, if you aren't familiar. Then getting into enterprise zones specifically. These are eligible for real property and state income tax credits. In Talbot County, two enterprise zones, the Easton Enterprise Zone, jointly administered by the town of Easton and Talbot County. And then the Tillman Island Enterprise Zone, that covers portions of Tillman Island, including the village center and some waterfront properties.
Should there be maps associated with this?
Yes. Yes, there will be maps included.
Okay.
Then we get into discussion of business and
So, I have a question, comment, or whatever. So, when I look at our zoning ordinance and it talks about institutional uses, and I don't know if that comes in economic development or housing or whatnot, but there's some of those institutional uses that are permitted in some of the zones of the county, the AC, in other words, the rural areas, that are kind of surprising. So in the 2016 comp plan, when we talked about that, the idea was we would allow some of these institutional uses, and they would be by special exception, and that would weed out where they should go and where they shouldn't go. But that, I feel like that's not strong enough. In other words, you know, I think the general consensus now by especially the and I don't want to get, you know, act like a lawyer because I'm not, but I think, you know, I had an attorney tell me that a special exception use in general should be permitted unless you can prove that it's different in that area than another one. So I think we need to be stronger. So my question is, does that come under economic development as a use, or does that come somewhere else, land use?
I think that would probably be most appropriate in the land use section, just given the
Okay.
fact that that kind of addresses and discusses, and you can see if you refer back to the 2016 plan, we often in those categories break down by zoning district
Right.
uses and what kind of the overarching theme and goals and objectives are of those land uses and what they're set out to accommodate. So I think if there is a change there or a change in, you know, how we previously saw that and how it was adopted under a zoning code, we would ultimately look at reflecting or highlighting that change in the land use chapter element, specifically for those residential and agricultural districts,
Yeah.
to state that maybe while some institutional uses may be appropriate to be located in these areas by special exception or by right, there are other uses that are deemed to be not so appropriate that should be located in different areas of the county where other resources are closer in proximity or something.
Well, yeah, in other words, and I don't want to dwell on this, but some of those uses, you know, I'm okay with them being in the AC zone and all that, but a lot of none of those uses should be permitted in a residential development. When you look at those institutional uses,
Right.
none of those should be permitted. In other words,
Yeah.
they're fine on a raw piece of land or just a one-off somewhere, but
And I think a discussion that we had offline talking about that in areas where we do have a lot of agriculturally or conservation zone land in the county, it's not accurately reflective of the neighborhoods that have been developed over time, particularly neighborhoods that have larger property sizes. So I think it's important for the county to look at when adopting those land uses, if we're not going to refine those zoning boundaries to encompass and distinguish the difference between neighborhoods and actual raw agricultural land, that we need to develop either bulk requirements that highlight that we want them in those agricultural areas via a minimum lot size or minimum property size or minimum acreage size or some other type of restriction that distinguishes the difference between an agricultural property and a residential property, because our conservation districts don't necessarily match up with what's been the built environment of a residential zoned area and what is the unbuilt environment of an agriculturally zoned area, because they're all kind of summed up and under that agricultural conservation or countryside preservation or intermixed or intertwined zoning classifications, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So I don't think we want to spot zone neighborhoods, so to speak, so I think it's more important to take a look and refine those land use bulk requirements to reflect where we actually want those businesses or those uses to be actually taking place in the county specific to those zoning districts. And a lot of times the limitation is really going to be on acreage size.
Yep.
Because you wouldn't have that, say you have an agriculturally zoned property, but it is in a residential area. If it's a residential neighborhood, one could surmise or assume that most of those lots are going to be under 20 acres in size.
Right.
But there could be another AC adjacent land also zoned the same that is larger than 20 acres in size, but it's not within a residential neighborhood.
Right.
So you don't want to rezone that residential
Yeah.
neighborhood out of the conservation district because it may truly be in the conservation district for purpose.
Yeah.
You want to refine the land use so that it's reflective of the land type that you want it to be
Right.
developed on.
So, and I don't want to get too far off track, but, you know, when I see this, a lot of these, what I would call uses not in a residential development. Most of these developments are, have a cul-de-sac, so they're not through roads. So I think we need to incorporate that as part of it.
Or they're on private roads that aren't
Right.
county maintained or state maintained,
Right.
and that's important to take into consideration as well, because again, a lot of these older subdivisions or even newer subdivisions are larger lot size, specifically because of the fact that they have to be on conventional septic system, and there are minimum lot size in those districts of predominantly 2 acres or larger. So if
Right.
you have larger land area, you usually get larger lots. The build out of the environment for that is usually more of like a single family residential lot of 5 acres of size or somewhere in that median average.
Okay, yep.
And to bring it back to your original point for the institutional uses, I think a lot of what we've discussed today is very important because it's building, the comprehensive plan is building upon itself until we get to that land use chapter. And so a lot of the work that Cassandra's team did in here in terms of going over what we have existing, we go over all the institutional uses in some chapter of the comprehensive plan. And I think the county's general position is to, favor obviously some like the tourism industry, and highlight those in the comprehensive plan for economic development, and then make sure that the ones that we don't, like the data centers and the large scale solar
Yep.
that we discussed earlier, are very plainly put so that we do get the land use chapter.
Yep.
We already have the ethos of what we're building on for that.
Got it.
So
Yep, agreed.
do we want to do public comment for economic
I think that's what that works for me.
All right. Andrew, Deepa, we're gonna step away from the table, and if anybody from the or anyone from the public wants to come up and comment, we're gonna have them come up, just kind of state their name, address, and allow them to just kind of give you and the planning commission their comments, and once that's concluded, we'll come back to the table so we can begin the discussion on the resiliency chapter.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. I think we want to start here on the left side of the room, if anybody would like to come up and I will ask, come up, introduce yourself, speak, and then when you're done speaking, then you can sign in so we can be a little bit more efficient for the next comment.
Sure. Steve Leader, I'm a member of the Royal Oak Preservation Group. Just picking up on where Mr. Council was talking about.
I'm sorry, if you would sit or get closer to the microphone, please.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
People don't generally say I don't talk loud enough. Steve Leader, I'm a member of the Royal Oak Preservation Group. Picking up on what Mr. Council was saying, I'm not sure if it fits into this section or the land use. Our concern is that we don't want the economic development of tourism to swamp the rural and agricultural nature of our village. And we just don't want anything to change the prohibition on further hotels in our village. We love the Oaks. We want them to prosper. We frequent them when we can. But we don't want to change the focus of the town from accommodations to being swamped by a commercial center. Thank you.
Yep.
One quick question, and I believe you sent us a letter.
I did.
I believe, yes.
Yep.
And one of the things that you brought in there that I think is important too in looking at the plan is not just this one instance at Royal Oak, but in the villages and hamlets throughout the county.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So I would say, the comprehensive plan, as you know, looks at the whole county, but the specifics, things like that might come down to the village master plans a little tighter. Is that,
Sure.
Brendan, if you, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think, we had some good discussion, particularly in our listening session in Royal Oak, about the desire to create a master plan effort for the village of Royal Oak. And those discussions continued on through, and we encourage the citizens to continue to participate in the comprehensive plan as well. We're hopeful, if their efforts lead to the council thinking that it may be beneficial to continue on with the village master planning efforts. We've already have a few that are in place now, Cordova being the most recent one that's been adopted by the council. It may be worth building in some efforts to our comprehensive plan to continue to explore building out master plans for those expand on certain or particular uses or highlight certain or particular uses that are of benefit and are of concern to the villages specifically.
Yep.
So it might be worthwhile having a village council with representatives from each of the villages who could confer and basically be a focus group for you, so that if there's some ideas, you could get some
Yeah.
feedback.
We had that at one time. I don't know where that all landed, but I think about 10 years ago, we did have that. So, we'll look into it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think, great, the sign-in
The
sheets,
sign-in.
if you could grab it and bring it over to the corner.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hi, I'm Julie Sussman. I did sign in. I'm also from Royal Oak. First of all, I want to thank you all for a lot of the work that's gone into this, because I know it's a lot. And when 10 years ago, I think it was 20 years ago, when we had village reps, and they disappeared, and I'm not sure why. That's not exactly my focus today, but I agree that it would be helpful to have some way for the village people to be able to to communicate on an ongoing, organized way. I think it's just useful. I'm just here as a representative of people in my village, nothing specific, but I do have a hat that I wear as the president of the board of the Waterfowl Festivals. So I did want to thank you for bringing out, and for Cassandra for bringing out the 30,000 people that we had. And that is actually my point. One of the things that I think we need to figure out how to think about is the balance between accommodations for tourists and people who live here. The festival depends on volunteers. We have 3 staff, we have a board, a working board, and then we have between 700 and 1,000 volunteers to put on a 3-day festival. And it is, if we don't have them, the festival doesn't happen. And it has a big impact economically for the county, for the town of Easton, and we want to continue that. One of the things that I've noticed during my decades of living here and participating is that when the people who are here, living here and volunteering, they're volunteering their time, they're also giving money to organizations like Plein Air, to Waterfowl, to other things, that Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum. We need that base in the county. So it's a controversial thing, and I'm not against short-term rentals, but I think we need to think about in the plan how to balance residential areas in villages and in the unincorporated part of villages with the number of short-term rentals. Because what happens, I had one next to me for a couple years, and the people who owned the house were dear friends of mine. They're still dear friends of mine, even though they've moved. I see them all the time. But and the people that they had to come were lovely, but they were very disruptive. It changed the way my weekends went. My dogs, would go into their property. Their dogs would come here. It was noisy. And it's not that there shouldn't be them. I just think we need to think about how many. And these are now not just people, like my neighbors were just people doing it. They're LLCs, they're organizations. So I would urge you to think about balance in neighborhoods. I live on a dead-end road on the peninsula, and it's not like I live on a big farm where I have a lot of privacy. My neighbors are on either side of me and across the road, and we're all very connected. Every single person knows everyone else. I'm old, I'm a widow, I live by myself. When I fell and broke my arm, on a Saturday night, I was able to call a neighbor to take me to the ER. When there's someone next door who's having a vacation, they don't really care. I don't know them. So I would just, in this section, I don't know whether it's the accommodation section, the land use section, but if you wouldn't mind thinking about a balance in number, or whether it should be the same as Easton, where you have to have the owner on the property. I'm not sure what the answer is, but I would appreciate your consideration of this issue.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks so much.
thanks.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Jerry Leader, wife of Steve. And thank you very much for all the great work on both the economic development section of the plan, the draft, but also Cassandra, the economic development and tourism report. And I had a thought as I read through the latter document about sort of an unrecognized economic development driver in the county. And that is the 52% of homeowners who live somewhere else. And they were called in the report, I think, seasonal residents. But in fact, because of the proximity to Washington, Baltimore, Philadelphia, because of the wonderful lifestyle here, they're much, much more than seasonal residents. In fact, you know, from what we know, from the people that we know, and there are, I guess, in our Royal Oak group, I counted 3 of us here today who have primary homes elsewhere. You know, they come here, their sort of their know-how, their spending power, their ability to serve on boards and give substantially to nonprofits is sort of an economic development engine of its own. And I think that maybe as you produce this report, increase your curiosity about what that means. You know, who are they? How do they use their homes here? Are they seasonal? Are they here 5 days a week? Steve and I are here, how many, Steve? 6 days. 6 days a week. And so, and you know, I'm on the Avalon board. One of my neighbors here is on the For All Seasons board. We have part-timers on the Academy Arts board. And so they're much more integrated, I think, many of us are, with the community than seasonal residents. So I just ask you to give some thought to that, have some curiosity about what that really means. And obviously I'm happy as an Avalon board member that they come to a lot of shows and buy art. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Andrew Kreinig. I'm signed up on the sheet. I'm a resident of Easton. And I thank you for allowing us this commentary period, because it is a good comprehensive plan, but I do have 3 questions. One is that Talbot County is primarily an agricultural county, and the Eastern Shore is primarily agricultural. Would it be possible in this comprehensive plan to add to investigate whether a value-added food production incubator could be located in Easton, and also a co-packing facility? A co-packing facility is a facility that takes somebody's recipe and makes it so that they can make 1,000, 10,000 of a product, as well as packaging it. There are very few co-packing facilities in Maryland. In fact, I can only think of one. So I think that there would be the possibility, and I see this as a way to reinforce entrepreneurship on the Eastern Shore, well, particularly in Talbot County. And also it could become a tourist attraction as well, if people could see where food is actually produced and they could be able to buy the products right there. So I would like if you could at least investigate the viability.
So while you're talking about that, and maybe you can get up with Cassandra later, so I'm gonna say 6 or 7 years ago, which Ms. Sussman, I need to double that because that's how things usually work time-wise. When I said 10 and it's actually 20, and I'm like, yeah, she's right.
I'm the same,
But,
I'm the same way.
But we did talk about that, and there was plans to, so talk to Cassandra, but, you know, a few years ago, I'm gonna be more generic, you know, that was discussed, but I don't know where, you know, where we are in that. But she could fill you in on that.
Okay, great. Second comment I have is about biomanufacturing and biotech. I used to work for the Maryland Department of Commerce, and one of my jobs was to try to attract biotech companies from Europe to locate in Maryland. And of course, they would either pick Montgomery County or Baltimore City. My suggestion would be, if we want to attract biomanufacturing or biotech here, the profile of Talbot County has to be raised, particularly at the Maryland Department of Commerce, for instance, or just statewide, so that people know that there's even the viability of a biotech industry here. Because frankly, in attracting companies to come to Maryland, never even crossed my mind to look at Talbot County. It was Baltimore or Montgomery County. And if Talbot County is serious about it, it needs to come up with some way of raising its profile so that people are aware that the possibility exists. The third comment I have is, when I look at the large-scale solar farms here, by trying not to have them located here, you're actually fighting against market forces, because farmers or landowners can make a lot of steady income by renting their land out and leasing their land out for these solar farms. What I would suggest is that, again, it be investigated to see the viability of agrivoltaics here. And by agrivoltaics, that means you can have a solar farm, and you can also keep the farm in agricultural use. These practices are done in places like Australia. I used to work a lot with Australia. And it makes it so that the farmers can still get a steady income, but at the same time, they can maintain the agricultural practices. Now, they may have to change what they grow. They may have to grow berries. They may have to have sheep, but at least it keeps it in agricultural usage. So those are the three comments I wanted to make.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. Anybody else from the right side? Cassandra, you know you're not off the hook. Did you have anything else? Did you have anything else?
I don't.
You all good?
I have something.
Okay.
Yes, good morning. My name is Monica Adi, and I'd also like to thank the Planning Commission and the staff and for all the work that's been done on this. I wanted to echo Ms. Sussman's comments about balance in short-term rentals. And I also appreciate the comment that was made about recognizing the input of residents in this plan somewhere, because really it is the residents who make the county such a great place to visit, and that's wonderful. And a couple of festivals were mentioned. I've been involved for the last 15 years in Christmas in St. Michael's, which was really not started as a way to attract tourists. It was started as a way to raise funds for charity. But it does attract tourists, and it's run by hundreds and hundreds of volunteers. When I first started getting involved, I couldn't believe how many people it took to make that happen. But the volunteers are all residents. Some are business owners, some are retirees, some are people who work in other occupations. But it is important that they be recognized. With respect to the short-term rentals, in addition to the comments about the balance, which I have long believed in, you need to balance the interests of the short-term rental owners with the interests of their neighbors, residents. One thing I'd like to see reflected is that right now in the county, we have one-size-fits-all rule. the rules for short-term rentals don't vary whether you live on half an acre or quarter of an acre or 20 acres. And I really think there needs to be some recognition that the impact on neighbors is very different depending on what kind of environment the rental is in. And one other point that was mentioned in this report, it said that short-term rentals are concentrated in Easton, St. Michael's, Tillman, and Oxford. Well, they're certainly not concentrated in the town of Easton or the town of St. Michael's, because as you probably know, the towns have very strict rules about short-term rentals. In Easton, they're allowed only in an owner's principal residence, and in St. Michael's, they're allowed only in the commercial district, and they have to be on the second story of a building. So a second story of one of the businesses on Talbot Street or Fremont Street. So there may be a lot of short-term rentals out in the Easton zip code, but not within the town, and same in St. Michael's. So it does make a difference as to where they're located.
Yep.
And thank you very much.
Okay, thank
Thanks.
you. Any further comments from anybody in the room? Anything else from the planning commission?
I'm good.
Okay. Move on to resilience.
Andrew and Deepa, I think we're good to move over to, or shift over to resilience now, whenever you guys are ready.
Okay, thank you, Brennan. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So, getting into the resilience chapter, as Brennan mentioned earlier, this is a new chapter. We're just starting to see this in other sort of plans across the state and across the country. So two main reasons why this is being included. One is just to increase the county's ability to withstand shock and sort of get back into the swing of things, whether it's economic shock or shock from a natural hazard or what have you. So its ability to withstand it and then jump back into some sort of normalcy or new normalcy as soon as possible. And the other reason is sort of more on the legislative side. So in Maryland, there was an exec order that was issued in September of 24 by Governor Westmore, when he established the state's Office of Resilience. So this is a state level agency, but it's sort of the goal of the agency is to guide resilience in municipal tenure comprehensive plans, which is why this is a direct offshoot of it. Also, there was a Senate Bill 266 that was passed late last year, October 2025, and that revised the statutes for local and comprehensive planning in the state of Maryland. So particularly the state's economic growth and resource and planning and protection policy. So this bill addressed 8 principles, and one of the principles is resilience. This is new. Never before have we had resilience included as one of the planning principles. So, and the requirement is to integrate resiliency measures that will minimize the impact of unexpected natural and human-caused threats on communities. So those are the reasons why this is being included. Initially, we had talked about sprinkling resilience in various elements of this comprehensive plan, but we sort of came to the conclusion that this was an important element. It needed to be a standalone element, and it needed to address every single element of the comprehensive plan. So in Talbot County, when we talk of resilience, it's the ability for the counties, the communities in the county, their economy, infrastructure, and natural systems to prepare for, withstand, adapt to, and recover from various hazards, whether it's coastal hazards, whether it's into going into other county comprehensive plans. So spending a lot of time and giving it a lot of importance says that this is going to be front and center going forward. Andrew.
Thank you, Deepa. Again, so this resilience section, as Deepa mentioned, it's resilience is the ability of communities, infrastructure, natural systems, the economy to anticipate, therefore withstand, adapt to, repair from hazards, long-term stresses. This could be anything related to climate change impacts such as flooding, sea level rise, extreme weather, or as we saw in 2020, it could be a global pandemic. And we do recognize the incredible job that Economic Development and Tourism Office did during COVID to support the local businesses of Talbot County. So that's just a prime example of the economic resilience that was shown during that time. So getting into this chapter, we started with an introduction, again, defining what resilience is, the background of the Maryland Executive Order, and the Senate Bill 266, passed in October 2025. Then we get into more of what resilience means to Talbot County specifically. So it's really, what I just mentioned above in that initial definition, with in Talbot County specifically, paired with preserving the county's unique rural and waterfront character specifically as well. Some objectives related to resilience in Talbot County include protecting residents, infrastructure, and natural resources from hazards, maintaining the economic viability of waterfront communities and working lands.
So on that one, I don't mean it, but on maintaining the economic viability, should that be county-wide instead of just waterfront or working lands? That's just a comment. I don't have an answer. I'm asking the question. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think we could certainly make that countywide. I think the sentiment of putting it in here, and I'm not going to put words in Andrew's or Deepa's mouth, was the fact that we were talking a little bit more about the waterfront or working communities in those areas, just because they're more prone to the natural type hazards that we're referencing in some of this section predominantly.
Yep. Sure. And I'm okay with it. I'm just asking the question.
I think we could certainly highlight that should be a countywide objective in this case as well.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you. The third objective to support adaptive land use patterns and reduce long-term risk. Strengthening natural systems that buffer climate impacts. And ensuring equitable protection and recovery for all communities. General overall resilience vision will be for Talbot County to be a coastal leader in resilience, integrating hazard mitigation, climate adaptation, and sustainability into every aspect of planning and decision-making to safeguard communities, natural systems, and economic prosperity.
So that seems to me like a pretty strong statement. I know we want to be, we hope to be, we strive to be. So just a comment there. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that one, but that one jumped out at me a little bit.
I think strive to be.
Maybe will may not be the right word. We can wordsmith that. We can work with Brian on that.
Maybe something like strives to lead.
Something along those lines.
Well, I don't even know about lead. I would be more comfortable with, we'll strive to be. If this is a pilot and you use it for everybody, we all can't be the leader.
I do want to add kind of similar-ish to the economic development and tourism integration that we did with their strategic plan. We also referred to, for this chapter, the Talbot County Hazard Mitigation and Resilience Plan. And we had met with
community pillars, is that written somewhere? Or did we kind of make that up?
I think the community pillars actually came directly out of the hazard mitigation plan.
Okay,
So
good,
those
okay.
directly inform this
Yep.
section. So that hazard mitigation plan, and I can get you all a copy of that as well.
Yep,
It talks about mostly and predominantly the health, safety, welfare, the education, and the infrastructure components of hazard mitigation
Okay.
aspects.
Got it.
This resiliency plan adds in our land use, economic stability, housing, and other efforts and elements that are in the comprehensive plan as well. So we're taking it a step further, if you will, of what a hazard mitigation plan will, and
Yep.
planning for community resilience as well.
Got it. Perfect, thanks.
Let me get into discussing resilience context by key risks.
Okay, so, be,
Specifically
be,
risks specific to
be,
Talbot County.
can I interrupt you a minute? Can,
Hang on
yeah,
one second.
can I interrupt you 1 minute before we leave that? So, under goal 2, or goal 1, I'm sorry. Oh, goal 2, I'm sorry, land use. So, the first bullet point says concentrate growth in designated growth areas in existing towns. So, when I think of resilience, sea level rise, all those things, and I look at, you know, the Bay 100 area for one, I'm not sure that we want to concentrate growth in the existing towns. I think, you know, maybe we're appropriate, and I don't have the right words, but I don't think we want to encourage major growth on Tillman Island. I don't have the answer, but we don't need more people in Bay 100. We need to worry about what we got there now.
The answer is the tide is coming up.
Yes,
That's the answer.
Right.
and everyone
Right.
needs to be aware of that before.
Yeah, I think, you know, putting in some language about being where appropriate would be helpful there. Just because in the second objective, talking about preserving floodplains, wetlands, open space, and natural protective systems, most of those areas predominantly already existing in floodplains as well. So that second objective kind of ties directly into the first. So by adding the information or the suggestion of where appropriate, I think we can determine that if our objective is to preserve floodplains, then that area is not the where appropriate for development in those towns.
Yep.
So I think we could probably just build that in there for more consistency.
Yep. Perfect. Sorry to interrupt.
Another option to say, concentrate growth in designated growth areas and leave it at that.
Okay. Yep, because our designated growth areas pretty much leave out expansive growth outside of where the unincorporated towns already exist. So those growth areas are already identified in the land use element of the plan. So you'd be able to refer back to both those documents to know where appropriate would be.
Okay.
Moving on here, resilience context by key risks, so we just several bullet points talking about specific hazard risks to Talbot County specifically, in the context of resilience, and again, recognizing that there is a set aside full risk, hazard identification and risk assessment chapter included in the hazard mitigation plan. So we're not performing a full risk assessment here, just kind of summarizing some of the risks associated with potential, natural and human caused hazards. So these key risks, first we discuss coastal and flood hazards, discussion of shoreline along Chesapeake Bay, rivers and tidal creeks, low-lying areas, particularly near waterfront communities, and how that heightens the risk of property damage, erosion, and disruption to critical infrastructure. Then we get into discussion of climate change impacts, the increasing frequency and intensity of storms, temperature fluctuations, and changing precipitation patterns can threaten agriculture, water resources, and adult infrastructure. water plants and broadband nodes. And these targeted services and facilities may include roads, bridges, power grids, water, wastewater systems, and broadband networks. Our next category will be community services and facilities. An example of a strategy category would be redundant and, let's say, emergency preparedness and continuity planning for community services and facilities. And a recommended action for that would be to conduct regular emergency drills at these community facilities or within specific community services to prepare for when a disaster happens. And then another example would be to maintain up-to-date continuity of operations plans for these facilities or for these community services, especially those that are considered essential services that, you know, residents will immediately need in time of a disaster, and those really cannot be offline for too long. We then move into housing resilience and develop a narrative there. An example for there will be our strategy category will be risk-informed housing planning. An example recommended action would be to incorporate flood, storm surge, and sea level rise data into housing plans and zoning. And our targeted services and facilities would be coastal areas, flood-prone neighborhoods, urban centers, and historic districts exposed to low-lying historic districts. We'll then touch on the water resources element. Yeah, it's very, very specific to resilience, and so that has a pretty in-depth, that'll have a pretty in-depth narrative kind of tying those two together. An example strategy category for this would be water supply protection and diversification. And the recommended action will be to develop multiple water sources to reduce reliance on a single source. And targeted services and facilities would include rivers, streams, aquifers, and municipal water systems. And moving into resilience of agricultural and rural conservation. An example strategy category would be, say, water and soil resource protection. And our recommended action would be to promote efficient irrigation and water management. Understanding the county likely does that already. But again, to include that within this plan, within the resilience specifically. And our targeted services or facilities would include watersheds, wetlands, riparian zones, and buffer zones, and irrigation areas.
So this one gives me a little bit of heartburn in that, you know, when it comes to agriculture and farmers will adapt. I don't think the county needs to get into irrigation. The areas that are most at risk don't have irrigation anyway, and I look at this as climate change and saltwater intrusion, none of which Talbot County for agriculture is going to do anything about. So as far as I'm concerned, other than to mention that agriculture will have to adapt to these changes, but I don't think we're going to be qualified to recommend actions, in my opinion. And I don't know, Ed, I don't know what you're thinking.
I would agree.
You know, I don't want the county telling me as a farmer what I should do with irrigation when we're regulated by the state and everything else anyway.
Yeah, the state and the feds do a very good job of that.
Yeah. The county doesn't have the knowledge or the resources. So just be careful with that one.
Then moving toward natural resource conservation resilience, a recommended strategy category would be land and habitat protection. And a recommended action associated with that would be to protect critical habitats, including wetlands, forests, riparian zones, and coastal marshes, via easements or acquisition. category would be to direct growth to resilient locations. A recommended action would be to limit development in flood-prone or environmentally sensitive areas. And then targeted services or facilities would include municipal centers, designated growth areas, and development sites. So again, that brings us to the end of our, kind of integration with the different plan elements. You can see we'll kind of have our own resilience plan here. We'll have a goal, set out goals and objectives, and then for each element, we'll have, this table and a narrative tying resilience to kind of integrated resilience with that element specifically.
So if I could make a suggestion as you fill in the blanks there, one, I would have a conversation, I think would be helpful if you were to talk to Tom Lane, who is chairman of the Public Works Advisory Board. I know they've been probably looking at some of this. Another one is Bill Boycourt, who is a former Planning Commission member, and I know he was on a group that looked at sea level rise and climate change specifically in the Bay 100 area. I think there's a lot of expertise there as well as county knowledge. And I'm sure Bryce could hook you up with both
Yep.
of those.
We'll give them a touch.
Yep, great.
And then just to round this resilience out, we have touched on our coordination with hazard mitigation planning and discussing integrating resilience. This plan is really a connection, between comprehensive planning and hazard mitigation planning and addressing that. And that really kind of brings us to the end of our resilience chapter. Again, I tried to give you, sorry we don't have it totally completed, I tried to give you a little bit of a snapshot of what you might see, an example within each of those. But that will be, this will be completed, as Diva said, likely in the next week or two, and we will have this over to Bryce and Brennan to distribute to whoever they feel is, should take a look at this, and will feel any comments and make those edits. But again, at this point, we're happy to field any comments and questions if we have any.
Okay. Great. We'll do it the same way. If anybody from the public would like to make comment on the resiliency chapter, starting on this side. Come on up.
Good morning. Nancy Andrew, Director of Talbot Family Network, the local management board for Talbot County. First off, thank you for the collective time, effort, and energy that's going into this comprehensive plan update. I think I really would like to just re-emphasize some points that I've offered on prior chapters, really focusing on the pillar of health, safety, and wellness as relates to this section of the comprehensive plan. Points I want to spotlight that I've touched on in prior comments, areas of real-world stress that already exist in our system that could be exacerbated by a natural disaster or as we saw during the pandemic. We have gaps in our housing continuum here across the system, but also the fact that we don't have a low-barrier shelter here and we're currently using hotel rooms as a way to fill that gap. That creates a real vulnerability for us in emergency situations. We have healthcare and behavioral health workforce challenges. Also ongoing food access challenges, both for community members due to affordability, but also for our pantries that help to fill the gap for our neighbors who are experiencing food insecurity. And then also, while we don't know the real world effects of this yet, with HR 1 coming after the election, we know that we'll see the impacts of SNAP and Medicaid cuts for our most vulnerable community members, which just creates more vulnerability in our community and across our system. I did want to mention that in 2021, I think it was, now under the Department of Emergency Management, there is the Maryland Food Resilience Council. So seeing that the state has really recognized food insecurity as a challenge for us statewide. And we saw during the pandemic that the county did really step in as a coordinating role with pop-up food pantries and other food access points in the county. So I'm not suggesting that the that the county would necessarily be the provider, but I think they have a really important convening role among all of the nonprofits and government agencies in our county. Also, I just want to point out, as may be relevant to this section, that the Department of Health is taking part in the Rural Health Transformation Project, which is a federal initiative funded by the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services. Maryland will be receiving $168 million to go to the $168 million a year for 5 years to go to our rural counties, including Talbot County. This is through the Health Department. And I just wanted to point out their 3 areas of focus because I think they relate to what we're looking at here in terms of health, safety, and wellness and our ability to bounce back as a county. Priority 1 there is improving the rural health workforce. Priority 2 is access and innovative care. And priority 3, again, relates to food insecurity. So we're really seeing a spotlight on food insecurity across a lot of different sectors in the state of Maryland. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, again, Julie Sussman. I just wanted to ask a question about, in the resilience, about development and septic versus sewer. And my understanding, could be wrong, is that there are a number of requests from individual owners of forested land and agricultural land for sewer going down, say, St. Michael's Road, because they don't perk. Their land does not perk. And because we have limited capability to process sewage with our existing capabilities, I'm wondering whether there's any thought to ensuring that existing housing stock is taken care of first before their septics fail down the road.
Yeah.
So,
And I just don't know.
we're supposed to have a workshop in the near future with the Planning Commission and the Public Works Advisory Board. I think, you know, I know personally some of the requests we've seen, we are, I guess, sympathetic to existing failing systems and their proximity to the, you know, to the water and all. But, you know, I know personally I'm not in favor of mass development or any future development because the sewer line happens to run by there. So that's, you know, that's kind of where I stand. But Brennan, you know, I think we're still scheduled for a workshop at some point. We might not have a date.
Still coordinating those efforts with the county council. I think they've had some discussions at the Public Works Advisory Board level about some of that information
Yep.
and what some of that policy guidance would look like. So I'm still waiting to hear back from him on what the position is with the county council and their level of preparedness to present a recommendation and have an overall open discussion about that.
Right.
So, I've kind of kept up to date and
Yep.
continue to touch base with him, but we do not have a date identified.
Right.
for that.
And we were hoping to include the county council in that as well, I think.
Yes.
But of course, they're in the middle of the budget right now, so,
Yes.
yep.
I mean, the thing is that some systems are not failing, but if that's the criterion, I think it's a little, more short-sighted because down the road, they will fail and
Right.
if they're passed by for new development. So I'm glad to see that it's on the agenda and, you know, I certainly would like to support the idea of dealing with existing housing stock
I mean,
first.
it makes sense, right?
It makes sense, and I think we've made a pretty good effort to try to hook up where it makes sense, where it's already coming by or adjacent to. You know, that's certainly discussions that we've had sort of ongoing over the last several years.
And particularly lots of record,
Right.
not creating any new.
Additional density.
Additional density,
Yeah.
yes.
I mean, I would love to be on sewer,
Yeah.
but we were passed
So,
by on you know, because Bellevue was failing, we were passed by.
Right.
But I'm not even thinking about me, I'm thinking about more, you know, down St. Michael's Road or wherever the sewer's going all the way to
Yeah.
Tillman. But it sounds like you all are on top of it. Appreciate it.
We hope so.
We like to think so.
We're doing our best.
Yeah.
How's that?
Anybody else on the left or right side? Anybody in the public? Okay. Well, thank you all for everything today. Brennan, you wanna conclude us here?
Yeah, I guess, again, thank you all for coming out to the meeting, and thank you, Deepa and Andrea, for walking us through these draft chapters so far. As we discussed, we're gonna be taking public comment all throughout the draft process of this plan. So these are kind of the first cut of both of these draft chapters. We'll be taking the information we received from this meeting, from the Planning Commission and several of the other advisory boards and other departments within the county that have information that is germane to these chapters, and integrating that into a final draft that we'll then bring back to you all for presentation and discussion. So this is not the last chance to comment on these chapters, so if you do have public comment, we do encourage everyone to continue to provide us comments via email and writing. Call us over the phone. We can get in touch with you on how best to submit comments, but we're taking comments all the way through this process. I believe Michael is on the call, but we've got a little bit of discussion to do to tee up our next work session meeting, but I think what we'll do is we'll have the first section of that land use element presented in our next work session meeting with you all, as well as maybe some aspect of the water resources element. So we'll discuss some of that more offline, and we'll have more to come and an update for you all at your Planning Commission meeting next week based on what we'll be discussing in our next work session. So.
Yep.
Will we have the charts in the resiliency chapter available by the time we meet again?
I anticipate that if Deepa and Andrew have those completed in the next week or two, we can go ahead and share those with you. So we'll share the updated chapter to just include those aspects, probably not the other elements of what's been discussed as far as draft changes to the chapter, but at least, at the very least, the elements that would be included in those charts, so you guys can kind of review those preliminarily. And perhaps we'll bring that back as an item of discussion in the next work session as well, so we can get a full review on the scope of the resiliency chapter done and wrapped up, so that our final draft will be all encompassing of that information as well.
I think that'd be a good
Again,
use.
I'm gonna encourage you to talk to Mr. Lane and Mr. Boycourt
Yes.
before you get too far on those charts.
Yeah, so
Yep.
the part of this resiliency chapter, once we build out this section, we're actually gonna share directly with the Public Works Advisory Board as well, and likewise with the land use and water resources elements chapter. So it's kind of
Yep.
their turn, so to speak. So
Yep.
we'll be working with them pretty
Yep.
closely. We're gonna share it with them at one of their meetings, and we've already been to one of their meetings to discuss the update of this plan. They seem generally supportive of working with us to help edit and revise some of these draft sections and elements as they kind of work through teeing up the draft update to the comprehensive water and sewer plan shortly after the conclusion of the comprehensive plan. So
Perfect.
timing's great for that.
Yep. Good
Thank you.
stuff.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.